This is Kura5, Bond of the Undying. Okay, I'm pretty sure they call it that so they don't get into any legal trouble, but as far as I'm aware, I'm not under any such obligation, so I'll do them a solid and call it what this actually is. This is Boktai 5, Bond of the Undying, a fan-made sequel to Boktai and also maybe finale to the series, kinda, sorta. I fell into this completely blindly through random happenstance. See, I have this 3D printer. You can tell it's mine because it's presently on the floor in a million pieces, not manufacturing my dreams. Just like everything else I touch. Like, seriously, I've got this weird inverted gear I have to snake a tube through, but the tube is bigger than the gear, and like, the one that I replaced it from was also too big. I had to actually cut the previous tube off. It's just frustrating and I hate it. But when I was actually capable of making cool things with my 3D printer, I really liked the idea of recreating props from games that I've really enjoyed, or other random nonsense because I think it'll make people happy, like my Mega Man Legends hair. And one of the things I really wanted to replicate was the hero weapon from a very personally important game to me, Boktai. And I figured that would be pretty easy because that weapon is in Metal Gear Solid 4, so I figured, you know, there's gotta be a 3D model of the Gundel Sol somewhere. Turns out that's actually a remarkably tall order to ask for. I found one on the internet, and it was like just a private file I couldn't actually access to make a copy of myself, so alas, once again, my dreams are dead. Again, just like everything else I touch. However, while my dreams of owning a physical Gundel Sol might, at least for now, be kind of an impossibility, I did stumble onto something else while looking for this 3D model, and that was a website of a fan Boktai game they were working on. And it turns out, they were working on it for quite a while, so I made a point to keep an eye on this thing, and a few months later, it actually concluded in its entirety. You can download the complete game right now off itch for free and play it. And I'm doing that on my Steam Deck, runs great. And I loved it so much, I need you to know what this game is. Because let me make something perfectly clear. This is not just a Boktai game. This is the best Boktai game, and it may very well be my game of the year. This game was absolutely incredible. If you're not familiar with Boktai, first of all, how dare you? It was one of the first things I ever talked about like 11 years ago. Heck, I talked about the sequel like last year. You've got some videos to catch up on, pal. But number B, it's actually not all that surprising because they didn't sell all that well, especially in the West. And it was really only known as a weird in-universe thing in Mega Man Battle Network that never really explained, oh no, this is actually a crossover event. This is a game you can go play right now, and you should because it's interesting and really, really fun. But the short version is, Boktai was a series of, at least starting on the Game Boy Advance, there was a DS version, games by Konami, specifically produced by Hideo Kojima. It was kinda like Metal Gear in the sense it was sort of a stealth game, but replaced the vaguely realistic military nonsense meets anime insanity, and instead replace it with Wild West gunslinging meets vampire hunters. And yeah, it's awesome. And it was incredibly innovative because while you were sneaking around these vampire manors, you were fighting using a weapon powered by the actual real-world sun itself, because the cartridges for these games were clear and had a little like solar panel in it that absorbed photons to charge your weapon in-game. It was incredibly innovative and very, very cool. But the fact that it required sunlight is probably why a lot of people bounced off of it, unfortunately. Fortunately, this game doesn't have that problem. It connects online to figure out local weather patterns, basically. And I know what you're saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. It connects online? What if I don't want to be online? What if I don't have online? That's really inconvenient. Well, don't worry, you can turn that off, because that's forward thinking from a developer that cares. The people involved with this game, they get it. Now, the story follows a solar gunslinger named Annie Oakley. Yes, really. Okay. Not to get too critical this quickly, but you have a solar-powered gunslinger that utilizes the power of the celestial bodies themselves. And you even go so far as to make her name a reference to American history. And you go for Annie Oakley. Not to be the one to point this out or anything, but Belle Starr was gift-wrapped to you, and you went with Annie Oakley? Okay, that's not missed potential at all. Either way, Annie's guild master tells her, Annie, get your gun. But before you can think about my reference making absolutely no sense, surprise vampire bites her, and suddenly the game ends. It was really innovative to actually end the game that quickly. I'm impressed by that. Okay, actually what happens is she does get bitten by the big, fancy, immortal vampire of the area. However, if she can kill it before the end of the day, she'll regain her humanity. Although, nice touch, as the level progresses, you do actually become more and more vampiric. Her portrait and character model change. She becomes a lot more pale, her eyes glow, her hair loses its color, and she actually starts taking damage with the sun. That's pretty cool. On her quest to save her own skin and, you know, I guess complete her duty if she can be bothered, she meets Emile, a very friendly vampire who offers, yeah, she promptly shoots him in the face. But later, when Annie's completely trapped, Emile happens to help her out and say, hey, don't shoot me this time, maybe, possibly? I'm actually here to help because I want to kill these big fancy vampires too. See, I used to be in league with them, they kind of messed with me, and now I want revenge. And now the two have to create an uneasy relationship, utilizing Annie's ability to purify vampires and Emile's ability to not be in that one trap that one time, to ultimately slay all the vampires and make the world a little bit less undead. It's definitely a partnership of convenience more than anything. They're very clearly using each other, and they make no bones about it. But will that be a constant? Well, you'll just have to find out. The first thing that really struck me about this game in terms of its writing is that it was very, very heavily written. Like, there is a lot to tell about this game in terms of its story and characters. And it's been a little while since I've played the entirety of the Boktai series up to this point, but this seems to have more world building and writing in it than all the games previously put together, from what I remember. There is so much here that just makes the world feel a lot bigger and a lot more well thought out and a lot more interesting. Like, this game talks about quite frequently the concept of witch hunts and how important that is on the society of this world. And it's interesting to see how there's like different factions and groups coming together to actively try and snuff out another group, and how dangerous these witches allegedly are and how much of an impact these hunts have had. And they play a huge role in the game itself, but in the background, it starts as basically just world building, and some of it's even a little bit silent because it starts with a character that's just innocuously out of the way that you wouldn't even notice unless you talk to everyone like I did, because I'm weird like that. There is a boatload of characterization here. Every single character has some kind of backstory as well as character growth over the course of the game. Your main characters are actually deep, multifaceted characters that spend a good chunk of each chapter exploring who they are and how they connect with each other, and how their connections have evolved and changed over time. There was even a point that made me sit down and say, the developer really liked Evangelion, didn't they? Because it just goes sort of that deep into the psychology of a couple of the characters. It's really interesting. And that's not just for the main characters. The bosses actually have a lot of background information and connections themselves. Like, this game is called Bonds of the Undying for a reason. It's about the connections that we make and the impact we have on other people and their impacts on us. This game is about things. All of the undead that you're actively hunting down, that are trying to destroy this world, they have deep interpersonal connections with one another. They were effectively a family, and you learn that as you go on. And it's fascinating to see because, you know, at least the first one, it's basically just an enemy you go kill because she's just objectively evil. But starting with the second boss, you realize, oh, they were in a relationship together. And later down the line, you really realize how connected and together they were. It was fascinating to see, and it made the world feel so much more interesting than just having an evil villain you had to shoot because they were evil and doing evil things. Frequently, your character's position in the world is actually addressed by the game, where they stand, what's going on around them, how people feel about them. This game is really expertly written, and I am thoroughly impressed with how much story they got out of this. Because I don't remember the Boktai games being particularly all that deep, but this game goes really, really hard, and it works really well. I am very, very impressed with the writing in this game. Now, the gameplay to Kura5, Bonds of the Undying, is very similar to the Boktai games that inspired it, which is to say that it's a fantasy spaghetti western themed stealth game, all about hunting vampires, and it's amazing. To give you a general overview of how a level is generally structured, you slowly work your way through a hideout for the vampire, solving devious traps, killing various enemies. But you gotta be aware, you shouldn't play this game like Rambo if you can help it. You certainly can, but it's not conducive to the full experience, as you'll find. Various enemies that you'll encounter have different affinities to them, such as mummies being entirely blind and requiring sound cues to startle them off, as well as various weaknesses that you can apply when taking them out. But the key goal is primarily to sneak past them and solve puzzles. Eventually, you might find a piece of treasure that will change how you interact with the world around you, a different element to interact with puzzles, or perhaps a different magic spell that allows you to utilize your character's special abilities a little bit differently. Using this ability, you'll continue to work your way through the mansion until you eventually, inevitably, get to a boss. So the boss fights in this game are incredible. Seriously, I cannot gush enough about the boss fights. They're huge monsters. They have fun, unique mechanics to each of them. They keep you on your toes. Very, very cool. But when you defeat the boss of the area, you're not quite done, because they're immortal. They'll just come back after a while. So you seal them in a coffin and you start dragging them through the mansion, backtracking as you go. This is why playing the game like Rambo doesn't really work, necessarily, because you're forced on the back half of the experience to slowly, methodically trundle your way along while carrying a big heavy coffin that makes you a bigger target and easier to see by enemies. Sure, you could drop the coffin and take out all the enemies, but the problem with that is eventually the occupant of said coffin will slowly drag themselves back to where they came from. So you really just have to play the game stealthily. However, this section does allow for some interesting extra mechanics because, like I said, you're slower, you make a lot more noise dragging a big heavy coffin. The occupant will be rather restless and actively attacking you as you go, so you kind of have to be aware of that. But it's also a big physical object you could use to weight down switches, which allows access to different areas as well as different puzzles. So even though you might be familiar with the path that you're slowly backtracking your way through, I really hope you are, because if you're lost you might be really in trouble. Well, you might have access to a few different bits of treasure and a few different routes you're not familiar with that will, again, keep you on your toes. When you finally get back to the entrance to the area, I hope there's enough sunlight out there, because you need to activate the pile driver, a big weapon of concentrated solar energy that will purify the soul of the undead. And it's big and it's flashy, and then suddenly it kicks into a second boss fight where they are trying to actively stop you from purifying them. So you have to not only keep your solar pile driver solar powered, because they will try and overtake it with their own dark energy, but they'll be actively attacking you at the same time, so you kind of have to threat manage and micromanage multiple things at once. It is very stressful and a ton of fun. That is, in general, how a level in Boktai, and by extension, Kura5, works. Now, there are smaller undead areas that don't have bosses, that are primarily you just wandering around solving a few puzzles, getting a cool little reward for it. Although, compared to the Boktai games that inspired this game, there are actually fairly few of those. And I suppose that's probably the one real complaint I have about this game, is there just aren't a lot of side areas or rewards for them. And honestly, I think that's a small thing to complain about when the core experience is so good, because it is, like I've said, unbelievably good for an indie fan project. And each character plays entirely differently. You have to use them in conjunction with each other, of course, to ultimately solve the various traps and challenges that await you. However, they do handle completely differently. Annie is the Solar Girl. She is a character that fights using solar-powered bullets that she fires into undead creatures that burn them from the inside out, because Boktai is actually incredibly metal. I don't know if I've made that clear yet, but it is. Whereas Emil is a vampire, so the sun is kind of the thing he doesn't want to be around. If you put him outside on a sunny day, he'll actively take damage and slowly get himself killed. He's far more comfortable in a cave. Now, Annie, with her solar gun, is powered by the sun, so she needs to charge it frequently using the light, whereas Emil, using the power of darkness, has to charge his energy in caves and at nighttime, which means that in order to power up both these characters without using a lot of item management, you have to find a good balance of being in the light and the dark, or ultimately using Emil in situations where it's far more dark so that he can utilize his powers without worrying about Annie's ammo consumption. Which of course means that the environment, and by extension the light itself, is a limited manageable resource you have to actively take into account at all times. You become very keenly aware of your surroundings and your environment, as well as just how bright it is, because you need that. That is your source of ammunition, and that is the biggest source of risk versus reward. Is it worth spending this ammo if I'm in the middle of a cave and have no source of sunlight? Likewise, their weapons are totally different. Emil is entirely a melee specialist, if we ignore his yo-yos, which are practically a ranged attack, whereas Annie is entirely a ranged specialist using her solar guns. And these solar guns, taking a cue back from the original Boktai to a much scaled back degree, the solar gun is actually kind of customizable. You can swap out its frame and its lens, changing its elemental property and how it fires. Emil, on the other hand, swaps out different weapons, and each character has different elements that they can use. Over the course of the game, you'll unlock more elements as time goes on that interact with puzzles differently, but they're split between your characters. However, the most obvious comparison is, of course, that Annie uses light and Emil uses darkness, but darkness has an extra added layer of something kind of interesting mechanically, and that is Emil plays even more like a stealth game. If he gets behind an enemy and hits him with a dark infused weapon, or if it's a slime any direction, because how do you tell what the back is on a slime? Seriously, that's a big quality of life thing the developer thought of that I don't see in enough games. You hit them with your dark infused power and they get frozen by the darkness itself, and then you can just go ham on them. So he plays entirely even more like a stealth character, and I love him. Each character has a different sort of magic. Annie is equipped with summons, which allows her to summon a friend that does different passive things, such as doing damage to enemies or actively healing her. Whereas Emil can actively transform himself to do different things, such as turn into a bird and go really small to take little hidden paths that there aren't a lot of them in this game, and it was really just sort of inconvenient to use, honestly, but still, it's nice to have that sort of thing. Or he could turn into a wolf and get absolutely vicious on an enemy. Seriously, when you unlock this, it is absolutely metal, and I love it. This game goes hard at times. Mechanically speaking, Kura5 is really just a refinement of what came before in Boktai, but the fact is, it is done exceptionally well. They have managed to polish this diamond to a shining point, and it's absolutely a blast to play. And there's tons of nice little details everywhere that you can interact with as well. In the first area, there's little armadillos that'll roll around that you can chase around, which is kind of neat and fun. You actively have to manage a bank account of solar energy, or you will get your kneecaps broken by the Dark Loans Mafia. That's not a joke either. That's a Boktai thing. What's this in the bank? Wait a minute, I know this guy. You want a coat? They didn't. They did. Okay, so in Lunar Nights, there's codes for completing the game that you could then use to unlock stuff. In this game, that is a thing no one should have ever had to do, but the fact that the developer did and went to that effort to actually make those codes useful, I am beside myself with the amount of effort that went into this and the amount of thinking and passion. The developer clearly cares about this series, and they took it super seriously when they did this. And remember how I said that Boktai's really only known as a weird side thing in Battle Network and not even a game on its own? Well, that fact wasn't lost on the developer either. I found this weird merchant at one point who sold me a theater ticket. I went to the theater, and then suddenly I was transported to Battle Network land for some reason. I'm not gonna lie, I had the biggest, stupidest grin on my face, because suddenly this becomes one of the best Battle Network games too, because let's be honest, the things after 3 weren't as good, with maybe the exception of 6, and that was the one that removed the Boktai references from the West. And I found a bunch of really cool kit while doing it, and they remixed the best song from Battle Network, the original Battle Network theme. Okay, developer, you're just buttering me up now, and it's working, and I love you. This genuinely is one of the greatest games I've played this year, and it just keeps seemingly getting better every moment I play it. And every single level as you play through the game, chapter by chapter, it escalates more and more with its creative choices and interesting ideas that they want to utilize. Like, the first level is generic tutorial, the generic tutorial, but once you get into the second chapter of the game, I was sure this was going to be on my Game of the Year list. You go to a theater, hopping between different movies that change your character's entire outfit, and you have to, like, play parts in the movie. It's unbelievably cool. Side note, Annie's film noir outfit and Emil's beach day outfit are easily their best outfits. But the characters are frequently changing outfits. Halfway through the game, they actually swap outfits to sort of show the evolution of their relationship. And suddenly, the solar girl wearing the bright red scarf is now wearing dark purple, and the dark purple vampire is wearing a bright red scarf, and it's just sort of cute to see them interact with each other and grow. And this game, it's huge for what it is. My first playthrough clocked in at 14 hours, and I was kind of told in game twice that there might have been a different ending depending on how I handled the bosses. I might have to go back and do a second playthrough now. But yeah, this game is actually quite sizable for what it is. It is very impressive. It's a really well put together game for its length as well, but that said, I did run into 3 issues. At least, I think one of them was an issue. I'm not sure. If it wasn't, it was a weird design choice. First and foremost, I did manage to get the game to freeze on a cutscene. Fortunately, the game autosaved, so I didn't really lose any time, but it did freeze on me once. A second issue is that halfway through the game, I just lost all voice clips from Emil. Like, for some reason, he just went completely silent. And the thing is, it started in a point in the story where he was intentionally being very quiet, so, you know, it seemed like a creative choice, but they never came back anywhere through the rest of the game, so it was just sort of eerily silent. So if that was a choice, it was kind of a weird one. And finally, through my own ineptitude, I ended up doing 3 rooms out of order near the end of the game, and I actually got trapped, because they expected me to have a thing I didn't have yet. And if it weren't for a specific enemy kind of glitching through a box and allowing me to teleport attack it, I would have been completely soft locked. Like, just, there was nothing I could do. And I actually got stuck in this room for like an hour trying to think, maybe I just don't understand this puzzle. No, I needed an extra object I just didn't have yet. But I did get trapped at one point, and fortunately I was able to get out of it. But for the most part, it's a really well put together game. Oh, there is one more bug, and it's a very, very small thing. But despite the fact I keep setting it in the settings as Celsius, it keeps displaying temperature in Fahrenheit. Like, it's a small thing, kind of annoying though. There is so much here that shows how much passion and how much the developer thought about this. There is very clearly a lot of creativity put into this game. And I am beside myself with how impressive this is. And it will always keep you on your toes. I remember when I started the second chapter, I thought I had a handle on what this game was because I'm familiar with Boktai, and I was like, okay, the first level, we're retreading. It's fun, but it's a retread. The second level knocked me on my butt a few times with what it was doing. And when I finally got to the end of the game, I was in like one boss fight. I'm like, okay, I got this, no problem, no problem. Then it completely 180'd on me, and I just had to laugh at the situation thinking, you know, this game became much more awesome every single step of the way. Like, there's so much creativity here, and it will keep you guessing, and it's so good. And none of it feels out of place, none of it feels badly thought out, none of it feels like something that it doesn't really work or anything. It's just something they thought to put in. No, every single thing feels like it has a place, it has a point, and it works excellently. This game is brilliant. The overall presentation to Kura5 Bonds of the Undying is excellent. Every single environment looks and feels like how it should, and it looks like it feels like it belongs in Boktai. I mean, you go to San Miguel, which is, you know, a big place in Boktai. We've seen it before. This recreates it, and it does so lovingly. The characters look absolutely brilliant. I remember thinking, like, the first time I saw Emil's true form, I was beside myself with how cool he looked. I think the characters are awesome, the villains are great, their transformations are absolutely fantastic. Heck, Annie's guildmaster, she fights with a freaking coffin, and it's awesome because if she knocks an enemy into them, she summons the ship from Lunar Knights to kidnap them. That's such a small thing I'd see a couple times before it really clicked in my head what was going on, but I just burst out laughing when I saw that. That is amazing. That's such a cool little thing. This game has freaking cutscenes! Like, really well framed and set up cutscenes. This should not be in an indie fan project. This should actually be like on professional grade work that people got paid for. And oh yeah, this game's got voice acting. Like, professional top shelf quality voice acting. I wouldn't be surprised if these are a bunch of amateurs. I know Annie's played by the developer themselves, but they all do a great job, and it honestly does sound like something professional tier. If this is a bunch of amateurs, they should get actual jobs as voice actors because they clearly have the talent for it. They did a great job here, and I hope this is something they can put on their resume. The music itself, tremendous, and it just works fantastically. And like I said, they remixed the best Battle Network song, the main theme from the first 3 games that they axed halfway through the series, and it made me angry because I love that song. Yeah, they gave it a Wild West twist, and oh, it's so good. The music when Emil goes on an absolute tear halfway through the game, oh, that is such a great song, and I wish I could sit around and record it. And as far as I can tell, there's no sound test option in this game, which is, okay, 3 complaints. You missed Bellstar, There's not enough side areas, no sound test. But the point is, this game is incredible for a fan game, and it honestly does deserve every ounce of praise that you could heap on it. It is incredible, and the presentation, top shelf. Now, if you want to play Kura5 Bonds of the Undying, the 5th Boktai game, and the best one by far, go do it. It's 100% free. Here's a link. Go play it. Go tell the people who worked on this they did an amazing job, because this game is absolutely incredible. I've said it before, but I will say it again. It floors me that this is a game that's being given away for free. I mean, legally they have to. If they charged money for it, they'd probably be sued into the dirt by Konami, but the fact is, they did Konami better than Konami could ever hope to. The fact is, if Konami ever dared to make another Boktai game, it would probably be a weird patchy slot thing, or something made by Bloober Team. No thanks. The fact is, I don't think Konami is capable of making anything of quality anymore. And the fact is, fans did it themselves over the course of a very long time, but did it better than they could ever hope to be. Sitting here and playing the games I've been playing recently, between this, Mega Man Rock and Roll, that Sonic go-karting game I've been playing on my Steam Deck, heck, my all-time favorite game on Steam is literally Sonic Adventure 3 without the license. I've kind of come to a realization that I've always sort of been very aware of, that honestly I don't need any convincing on, and that is, we don't need big companies. We don't. Fans will do it for them better and probably at a fraction of the price, and they will not charge fans $100 for a game. The fact is, most games nowadays are unbelievably expensive to purchase. They're just unaffordably expensive, and they're getting more and more so by the day, but fans actually seem to know how to make the good games, as opposed to completely destroying something that might have been of some describable quality by actively cutting down content, removing it to sell it back to you, removing features, just so that they can charge more for it and saying that you're getting the better experience. Big name developers nowadays are absolutely ruining things of quality, and fans are doing it for free better and giving you a far more creative, far more interesting experience. And they're not tethered to publishers that require certain things. They can be as creative as they want, and I will champion that. Honestly, more and more, I think fan developers should be the only developers out there, because they're the only people making quality stuff at this point. As sad as that is, certainly affordable for people who are, you know, not entirely rich. Chicken Hat did so much with this game. They had so much creativity in this game. They had a vision, and they worked very, very hard to execute it. In the end of this game, you actually get to see all the people who worked on this game, but you can sort of talk to them and get sort of a feel for it. And they even admit this was originally just a fun thing they wanted to do that then took 10 years to put out. The fact is, they had a vision, they had creativity, they had an idea, but most importantly, they had the grit to see it through. I am thoroughly impressed with this game. I am thoroughly impressed with Chicken Hat, and if they ever make another game, I will play that. Sight unseen, because the fact is, I know they can make quality. You know, a little while ago I once heard this term that I've now since forgotten because my brain's made of pudding, that describes something that resonates with you on a deeply personal level because of your own history and sort of personal experiences. I can't remember what that word is, and it honestly frustrates me to no end, because that would describe Kura5 perfectly for me. It is Boktai, a game series that meant the world to me, but it's the best Boktai, made by people who very clearly cared about this series and just wanted to make the best thing they could. And the fact that it's labeled on its own fan page as playable fan fiction, I think is honestly kind of degrading to it. If you like Boktai, not only is this more Boktai, this is the best Boktai. And if this is how Boktai has to end, hopefully it isn't, it's a much better note to end on than whatever Lunar Nights was on about. That if you don't consider this actual Boktai, you're doing a disservice to both this game and the Boktai series, because this is the best the series has ever seen. Kura5, you need to play this game. Because I'll tell you, as someone who suffers from very serious depression, this game put the sun in my heart and made me smile from ear to ear. This game was really something special to me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to resume my quest for a Gundel Sol 3D model and take a sledgehammer to my stupid printer.